When Gears of War E-Day was revealed, most fans started asking the same questions. How does this fit into the timeline? How would Marcus and Dom be different? And what exactly is the Coalition planning with this prequel? But there's one question that hasn't really been explored. Could Gears of War E-Day have multiple endings? Now, before anyone jumps into the comments, there's no absolute evidence that E-Day will feature any branching endings. The Coalition hasn't hinted at it, leaked at it, or even suggested it. But when you look at modern game design, Unreal Engine 5, and the direction Xbox has taken with Xbox-driven narrative storytelling games, then it could possibly be something. So today, let's break down whether or not multiple endings would actually work, whether they should, and what they actually might look like. Gears has always been linear. One of the most defining features of Gears of War has always been its cinematic storytelling. From the very first game back in 2006, all the way through to Gears 4, most of Gears 5, players have been taken through carefully scripted missions with very little narrative deviation. Every single player experiences basically the same campaign. Dom always joins Marcus, the Lightmass bomb always launches, Jacinto always sinks. Those moments are always fixed because they're already part of the franchise's established history. Over the last decade, narrative games have evolved considerably. Not every game goes full RPG with hundreds of branching paths, but many developers do include smart choices that personalize the player's choices without playing the overall story. The great example is The Witcher 3. No matter what you do, Geralt still hunts monsters, searches for Ciri, and confronts the Wild Hunt. The broad structure of the narrative stays the same. What actually changes is the consequences of your decisions. Games like Detroit Become Human take branching narratives even further, where almost every major decision creates entirely new story paths. While that's probably far beyond of what Gears has ever aimed to do, it shows how much modern audiences have appreciated modern stories and reactive decisions. Even Mass Effect built its reputation on allowing making moral choices and carrying consequences across an entire trilogy. Gears has never been that kind of series, but modern players are more accustomed to narrative choice than more than before. So it is reasonable to ask whether or not the Coalition has thought about incorporating any of those ideas into E-Day. Technology also changes what's actually practical. Back in 2006, creating multiple endings wasn't simply a creative decision, it was an expensive one. Every alternative ending made more cinematics, motion capture settings, voice acting, testing, scripting. Those costs added up quickly, especially on the hardware of the Xbox 360. Today, Unreal Engine 5 gives far more flexibility. Systems like MetaHuman allow for highly detailed facial animation. Nanite enables developers to build incredibly dense environments without having to manage every single asset. And we've seen mega lighting already in the developer showcase and the tech demos. Studios can often create cinematic content more efficiently than they could 20 years ago. That doesn't mean branching narratives are easy. They require additional writing, performance capture, quality assurance. The tools available today, though, reduce the technical barriers that were in previous generations. Basically, in other words, if Coalition wanted to make more cutscenes, more story-driven, more decision-making, it would be a lot easier using Unreal Engine 5 than it was 20 years ago. So what could multiple endings look like? If the Coalition decided to experiment with multiple endings, they would most likely need to fit an established canon. One possibility is a different final conversation between Marcus and Dom, depending on earlier decisions. Another could be different memorial scenes that recognize the soldiers that you lost or that you saved when you were in the campaign. The final cinematic might focus on different emotional themes. One ending could show Marcus becoming emotionally hardened and embracing duty above all else. Another could emphasize the human cost of war, with Marcus carrying guilt over those he couldn't save. Another possibility is an epilogue similar to what Metro Exodus does. While the game's major events remain consistent, the ending changes depending on your actions throughout the journey, giving players a stronger emotional connection to their decisions. The Coalition could use a similar structure without disturbing the established lore. Would the Coalition actually do this? This is probably the most important question. Looking at the Coalition's history, the answer is maybe. But it seems unlikely. The studio has consistently emphasized on cinematic storytelling. The campaigns are carefully directed, they're highly polished, they're built around delivering a shared experience for every player. Even the controversial choice in Gears 5 created an interesting challenge. Because players could choose JD or Dell, the Coalition now has to decide which outcome, if either, is considered canon moving forward, or find a way to account for both in future stories. That experience may make the studio cautious, but on the other hand, E-Day does represent something new. If there ever were a project where the Coalition might experiment with more nuanced playing agency through optional dialogue, character interactions, or alternate endings, this would be a logical place to explore those ideas. They don't have to rewrite the history of Sarah. Instead, they could offer different emotional perspectives on the same tragedy, allowing players to experience E-Day in a way where E-Day feels more personal, in events that defies the Gears universe. Whether the Coalition chooses to pursue that approach, it remains to be seen. As of today, there's no indication that Gears of War E-Day will feature multiple endings, but it's an intriguing idea because it highlights the balance every prequel has to strike, telling a story that feels fresh and surprising while respecting the history that the fans already know. And that might be the biggest challenge that E-Day faces, not changing the past, but making us see it in a different new light, or dark. So what do you think? Should Gears of War E-Day stick to the traditional linear storytelling, or would you welcome alternative endings? For me, as long as they stay true to the war, I'm happy with either. Well, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.